Let's look now at the demographic nature of this. How do demographics factor into this situation? We're going to look at three specific areas, and they are, number one, racial differences, number two, gender differences, and number three, socioeconomic differences. First, let's look at racial differences. According to the Annie E. Casey Foundation, in 2019, almost 6 million Black children in America lived in single-parent homes. These children comprised 64% of the Black children in America. In 2019, almost 7.5 million Hispanic children in America lived in single-parent homes. These children comprised 42% of the Hispanic children in America. We're getting close to half even in the Hispanic population, which tends to be very family-oriented. In 2019, almost 8.5 million white children in America lived in single-parent homes. These children comprised 24% of the white children in America. So in the white population, it's up to about a fourth of the children in America. The point is that regardless of where you live, you're going to have a substantial number of children in your area who live in a single-parent home. And the chances are very great that your classroom will contain some of these children. A study conducted by Dr. Holly Hurd of Rice University reported this. Black adolescents have lived about half as long in two original parent, father, stepmother, and single father families as have white adolescents, and spent more time with single mothers or non-parents. In layman's terms, they have spent a higher portion of their life in a single-parent home on average. Dr. Hurd also reports that Hispanics have spent more time with single mothers than whites. Blacks have also experienced more family structure changes than have whites, which is evidence of more unstable family histories. And so again, we're not stereotyping any particular group. We're just giving the numbers of how in America at this point in time, each group is being affected. And there is an emotional aspect of this. Dr. Hurd noted that Black and Hispanic adolescents reported higher levels of emotional distress, anxiety. Blacks and Hispanics were less likely to have college plans, that is, those coming from a single-parent home. The inference that we can make here is that the confidence level of many of these students is being heavily impacted by the home situation. Dr. Hurd further noted that Hispanics ranked themselves as less intelligent than did whites, and that Black and Hispanic adolescents had a slightly lower average GPA than did whites. It was about a fourth of a grade point lower on average. Again, we're seeing an impact on the level of confidence that a child has, and it's somewhat falling upon racial lines. Let's look also at the impact based upon gender. According to a study from Seoul, South Korea, and the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, since 1990, there has been a 62% increase in single-father families in the USA to a total of 2.2 million households in the year 2000, or 2% of all households in the USA. Dr. Douglas Downey of Wichita State University reported this. Single mothers are more likely to be involved in their child's PTA than single fathers. Similarly, single mothers are more likely to know the names of their 8th graders' friends and the names of these friends' parents than single fathers. Single fathers score significantly higher on only one interpersonal parent resource, educational expectations. So we see the strengths and the weaknesses of each parent by gender. We can also reach the obvious conclusion here. We were created as children to need a solid mother and a solid father in our lives. So some overall observations based on Dr. Downey's study are that single fathers tend to provide a number of background advantages over single mothers. Children from single father families tend to perform higher on standardized tests, but they don't tend to have higher report card grades. And I've never understood that correlation. You'd think higher on one would be with higher on the other, but in his study, it didn't turn out that way. Classroom behavior of children living with a single father tends to be no better than that of children living with a single mother. Children living with single mothers tend to experience interpersonal and social advantages over children living with single fathers. Again, strengths and weaknesses on both sides. At the parent's gender, what about just the child's gender? This is from a study conducted by University of Virginia, and the Medical University of South Carolina. Parents across all family types perceived their sons as less well-adjusted than their daughters. Girls were seen as more scholastically competent than boys by parents and teachers. Looked at race, we've looked at gender. Let's look at the socioeconomic differences, because the breakdown of the American family does not limit itself to any socioeconomic boundaries. It's not a low-income issue. It's not a middle-class issue. It's not a high-income issue. It's everywhere, unfortunately. And within every different socioeconomic class, we're finding the American family crumbling. A study from Munich, Germany reported this: roughly half of the achievement difference between students living in single and two-parent families simply reflects differences in socioeconomic status. And you have to remember, many times when someone becomes a single parent, their economic status drastically changes. You have to look at the obvious fact that in many cases, the lowering of a student's socioeconomic status is caused by the family breakdown. Look at these two examples. A middle-class stay-at-home mom who suddenly finds herself with no house and in need of a job as a result of a divorce. Or a working-class father who can now barely afford groceries after he pays alimony and child support. So it often cuts both ways. On both sides, we often see a person's socioeconomic status tremendously decline as a result of a change in marital status or family status. According to this study from the Netherlands, there is often a loss of income that generally goes together with family disruption. In short, this is due to the fact that after a divorce, two households need to be supported instead of only one, and thus a lot of household expenses cannot be shared any longer. I use my own experience as an example. When my ex-wife and I divorced, we each found ourselves in other houses about the same size as the house we had occupied together. The utility bill at my house, however, didn't go down much. Her utility bill didn't go down much. My water bill, her water bill didn't go down much, and on the list goes. Our incomes, however, did go down as a whole because we had one income coming into the house instead of two. And so expenses really did not go down much. In fact, they went up when you factor in attorney's fees, but income was roughly cut in half. And so as all of these factors meet in this perfect storm, as we have previously seen, fewer resources often equates to lower academic performance. So thus, in addition to performing poorly in a financial manner, these families also begin to perform poorly in the academic arena. And since in reality no one lives in a bubble, homeschoolers and homeschool parents are not immune to this same dilemma. Our final section addresses the question, what can we do as educators? We will look at two particular categories of actions that we can take. Number one, influencing public policies, and number two, making one-on-one efforts. Regarding public policies, sadly, we're often dealing with a legal system which thrives on antagonism. According to a study by Auburn University, with joint custody, it is likely that social capital would be more consistent, predictable, and substantial, thus rendering a more favorable environment in which students can develop their academic skills. The sad truth, however, is that we're dealing with a legal system which often works against joint custody because it's not as profitable for the attorneys involved. This study from the University of Houston and the University of Arkansas says the following: those official public guidelines, statutes, and policies which act to increase father presence and decrease father absence should reverberate in more children attaining the minimal sub-goal of attaining a high school diploma. So when we look at the big picture overall, we see that on the national scale, there is a natural, tangible academic benefit to having two positive parents involved in the life of a child. So we can easily conclude that children need positive interaction with both their mothers and their fathers whenever possible. But we have a legal system that is designed to create additional antagonism and often remove one parent as much as possible. So we desperately need legislation to bring this to an end. We need a system which doesn't include forcing one parent out as a natural consequence of the process. Here is a map showing where each state stands on the issue. This is from custodyexchange.com, and it looks at the question, how much custody time does dad get in your state? The darker the state, the more custody that fathers tend to get. And again, we're not trying to be biased toward fathers. I'm being biased toward the fact that both parents need to be involved as much as possible. I'll leave that slide up for a moment so that you can find your state and see where it stands. Here is that same information in the form of a ranking. So take a moment here and find your state and see where it stands. This shows that we are making progress. There are 20 states which now divert to 50% custody each way. Unfortunately, my divorce took place in Tennessee, which I learned ranks number 50 out of 50 states. Another area of public policy which we need to look at is the level of assistance to single parents. And although I tend to lean more conservative in my political beliefs, there is research to show that single parents are in need of financial assistance in order to provide for the needs of their children. This is a study from Penn State, University of Sussex, and a university in the Netherlands. It says, countries having more generous welfare policies show smaller or no achievement gap by family structure. To some extent, the investment in national family policies explains why Austria ranks at the top, but the United States and New Zealand rank last in the academic resilience of children from single-parent homes. So as we compare the United States to other nations, we do see some data to indicate that nations which provide more economic assistance to their single parents also see academic growth among the children of those parents. We can easily conclude that when a single parent has more discretionary income available, he or she is able to provide more opportunities for her child. Public policies which provide assistance, such as job training, child support enforcement, child care assistance, and tax credits, need to be strongly encouraged because a parent with more economic resources is a parent who is able to provide more academic opportunities for his or her children. We've looked at the areas for which we can lobby, but what can we do as individuals? There are a lot of one-on-one efforts we can make, and we all realize that when we lobby for something, it may or may not change, but there are things we can definitely change as individuals through our one-on-one efforts. Let's look at some of those. One is to simply become familiar with the stages of divorce. Many of our single-parent children are single-parent children because of a divorce. Now, that's not all of them. There are many reasons one becomes a single parent, but divorce is one of them. And so we need to be familiar with the stages of divorce so that we can help those children who have endured that. Those stages are denial, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. According to this study from the reading teacher, children react to these stages differently than adults. Although they may be able to deal with a divorce effectively at age 7, they may need to deal with it again at age 14. It's kind of like dealing with a death in the family. You never truly get over it. You get through the initial shock, you learn to deal with it, but you never truly get over it. This article also stresses that we need to look for signs of stress in children, including personality and behavior changes. And we know as parents that when a child shows a quick change in behavior and countenance, there's usually a reason behind it. There's usually something that has occurred. So be mindful of that as you observe the children in your classrooms. And be careful not to host well-meaning events that might actually create more stress. A lot of schools like to do muffins with mom and donuts with dad. And I'm not opposed to those things, but if you're not very careful, you can actually have the opposite effect of what you intended. If you're going to do those events, either change it to someone special that they can bring, regardless of gender, or have some females on standby to be those moms for students who don't have a mom. and have some males on standby to be those dads for students that don't have a dad. We're working in an environment now where there are so many broken homes. We just need to make sure that anything we do, which is well intended, doesn't actually work against the goal that we began it with. Make books available which address the issue of divorce. Here's some examples. Don't Make Me Smile by Barbara Park, A Girl Called Al by Constance Green, The Divorce Express by Paula Denziger, and The Kid's Book of Divorce by the unit at Fairweather Street School. It's very likely that you're going to meet parents along the way who are single parents and who really want to help their children more but just don't know how. And so if you can provide them with resources they would not otherwise have, you're going to make a world of difference in the lives of those parents and those children. Whatever you do, do not expect failure from children of single parent homes, because they will pick up on it. According to this article from the Reading Teacher, studies have shown that teachers' expectations of students critically influence students' actual achievement. Too many times, what we expect of children happens. I'm sure you've seen that in many different scenarios in your own homes. We often become self-fulfilled prophecies, as do our children. As much as possible, try to keep both parents informed and involved in everything related to the education of your student. This may take some research. It's not always very clear from the school records what the situation is. You may have to do some asking, a little bit of digging. But unless there's a parenting plan that says one parent is not to be involved, then both parents have a legal right to be involved in the education of their student. Remember that many non-custodial parents want to be involved, and by no fault of their own, they've been forced into the back seat by an aggressive legal system. As you interact with parents through the year, and many of them are going to be single parents inevitably, do everything that you can to provide a non-judgmental and welcoming atmosphere for single parents who enter your school building. Let them know how important they are, how special they are, how much you care about them. Remember that in most cases, that single parent did not choose that situation. And remember, especially, the children of those single parents had no choice whatsoever in the situation or the makeup of their family structure. Come up with some resources to help those parents and children. One good organization, and they do support groups, is called Divorce Care. DivorceCare.org is where you can find them. And they also have a children's program, Divorce Care for Kids. I went through part of the Divorce Care support group, and it was amazing. If you're looking for a more secular option, the Exchange Club is available in many cities as well. We have reached the conclusion of this session. Before we do conclude, I want to place all of my references on the screen. As we conclude, let me remind you once again that my name is Eric Kelly, and it has been my sincere pleasure to host you for this learning experience. I invite you to follow me on Facebook, where my personal page is simply Eric Kelly, and my professional page is entitled Biz of Teaching. I also have a few teacher resources on my Teachers Pay Teachers page, and you can learn more about me on my website, which is www.bizofteaching.weebly.com. I would love to speak to your co-op, school, or district, and I am available in person within about a 100-mile radius of the Memphis area. I am a full-time teacher, and so I have to schedule my speaking engagements around my real job. But I am also available anywhere in the world by virtual connection. Feel free to reach out to me by phone at 870-771-0636 or by email at GregoryEricKelly@gmail.com.